PowerShell scripting, combining data from multiple sources. Now, so far in our discussion on scripting, we've pretty much had scripts that ran one command. But what if you needed a script to run a couple of different commands and produce some output that somehow combined the output of those commands? Well, that is exactly what we're going to do. The fundamental concept is that every PowerShell script needs to produce one and only one kind of thing in order for it to work well in the PowerShell paradigm. So when you've got multiple commands that you want to run, we're going to need to pull all that data together into a consolidated form of output. This is something a lot of folks overlook as they start into their scripting journey, but this is going to make you a lot more effective. One of the things that can really mess you up when you start trying to gather information from multiple sources and create a combined kind of output is the idea of the PowerShell pipeline. And the basic concept is that each script only gets one pipeline. And if you start jamming a bunch of different things into that pipeline, PowerShell won't do as good of a job of displaying that or working with it. So instead what you do is you go gather all the information you want to output and you combine it together into a custom output object. Now, as you're going to see, PowerShell is sometimes a little lackadaisical about doing exactly what you tell it, and there's a reason for that, but we're going to show you in version 3 how you can also do a little bit more to preserve property order and keep your output looking a little bit more like what you thought it should, although I'm also going to explain why you might not even care. Standard disclaimer, everything I will be showing you will work in version 2 unless I clearly state otherwise. I'm just going to be working in version 3 because I like the tool better. So let's kind of start with just a basic concept. Let's say we want to gather information from a couple of different places about a computer. Get WMyObject class Win32 operating system from the computer dc.lab.pri. That gives us some basic information about that computer, but there's some other information you might want to get from another class. So you might say, okay, all right, let's say that's all the information I want. Great, I have my two commands. Let's copy this first one. Whoops. Let's copy this first one to the clipboard. Copy. Let's open up a script file. We'll paste that in there. Let's go back. Get my second command. Copy that to the clipboard and go back and just paste that in here. Now look, I've been watching. I know it's time to save this. Let's call it c get sysinfo.ps1. Yeah, and we can parameterize that. Param string computer name. This is for posterity. Let's make it look nice capital letters. And then we'll just use $ computer name in place of our hard-coded. You might think yourself pretty clever because you can put a bunch of these different things together and retrieve information from a lot of different places. For example, let's say we decide to modify this so it's also grabbing information from the BIOS. This is all excellent stuff. Definitely things that you might want a technician to be able to quickly query about a computer. And I mean, if this is the output they're going to get, well, that's perfect. That's exactly what they need. So let's run this. I'm going to clear that output window just so we can, in fact, let's put it side by side. We can see it all. Oh heavens, because I ran it without a computer name. Well, let's just try it over here then. Get sysinfo tab computer name dc.lab.pri. Okay, now it'll work. Now it'll be beautiful. Yeah, that's okay. That's not so bad. Let's go full screen again here. Maybe they want to output that to a CSV file. Export CSV dc details.csv. Yeah, let's take a look at that file. Notepad dc details.csv. Ooh, wow, that's a lot of information. Okay, what happens if we import that? Import CSV dc details.csv. Ugh. Oh, we just didn't get all the info. Look at all that stuff. So what the heck? All right, well, this is kind of what I alluded to in the introduction, which is when you run these commands individually at the console, each of them runs in its own pipeline. Meaning here in the console, if I run this, enter, that's a pipeline. If I run this, enter, that's a pipeline. Every one of them gets PowerShell's full attention. Each of these commands is producing a slightly different type of output, right? It's different. It's got different information. When you run a script and you just run a command like this, I'm telling this command to put its output into my script's pipeline, and then right behind it in that same pipeline, I'm putting that info, and right behind it in that same pipeline, I'm putting that info, and PowerShell's getting 3 different things jammed into the same pipeline, and it doesn't know what to do with them. Here's how you can tell that that's actually happening. Run this and pipe it to getMember, and you'll have a system.management.management object Win32 computer system. That's what you asked for, and that's what you got. Run this one and pipe it to getMember. You got a Win32 operating system. That's what you asked for, and that's what you got. Run that script, though. Where's my script? Pipe it to getMember. What the heck? We got 3 things jammed into that pipeline altogether. PowerShell does not excel at dealing with that by default. You have to do some pretty fancy, clever things to make it deal well with multiple things in the pipeline. As you saw in that CSV file, a lot of information just got left blank because it wasn't grabbing stuff in the right way. So each script gets one pipeline to work with. And if you really want to leverage PowerShell's capabilities well, you need to output a single thing. Well, how can you take 3 things and make them into one thing? By combining them. Here's how. Instead of just allowing the getWMyObject command to output to the pipeline, I'm going to save its information into 3 different variables. Now, I've chosen variable names that will help me remember what's in each one. OS has the operating system, CS has the computer system, and BIOS has the BIOS. Now I need to decide what information I want to include in my output. And I'm going to do that in a hash table. This is a lot like the splatting that we did in some previous nuggets. So let's start with the computer name itself. That'll be nice to have in the output. Let's grab the OS version. And that's going to come from my OS variable in the version field, version property. Let's grab the SP version, so that'll be os.service pack major version. These are all property names that I've looked up previously. That's how I know they're there. But if you're not sure, well, just go to the console and run the command. Let's do computer system. Select star. This tells me everything I can choose from. I got total physical memory. I like that. I want to use that. What else? Manufacturer and model. I'm going to do those. MFGR equals cs.manufacturer. So see, I'm actually creating output properties that have different names. I wanted MFGR instead of manufacturer. Model, cs.model. RAM, CS total physical memory. BIOS serial equals BIOS. So I'm going to go get my BIOS variable now and do serial number. So I've combined information from these 3 different places into this one structure. I do not want to just output that structure directly to the pipeline though, because it'll output as a hash table. Here's what happens if I do. Write output props. Let's go down to the console and run that now. Get sysinfo, oops. Get sysinfo, computer name, dc.lab.pri. This isn't exactly the type of output I wanted. Ultimately, I'd like to be able to query multiple computers. I was kind of hoping for an OS version column and a model column and a RAM column. So what I need to do instead is to create a new object. And Microsoft gives us a special type of object called a PS object, and it's designed as a blank canvas that we can paint on with whatever we want. And I will attach my properties to it. And it's that object I will write out to the pipeline. Look at the difference. I'm just going to hit up arrow and run the exact same command again. Seems the same, right? Except I don't have name and value properties. That's actually my property. Look here, I can pipe that to format table and ask it to auto size it, and it will. And yeah, some information got chunked off because my font size is really too big. I could also say, you know what? At the moment, right now, all I want to see is the OS version and the computer name. So by outputting an object, I get to take advantage of all the other cool things PowerShell knows how to do, like export CSV DC details. And I get back in exactly what I put out. So it's a really well, in fact, if we look at that DC details, that's a very simple, nice, easy to deal with CSV file. So the idea is to take multiple objects, multiple pieces of information, combine them together into a single structure, and output that to the pipeline as a single consolidated object. Now I said part of my goal here was to make this do multiple computers, right? That makes computer name accept multiples for each comp in computer name. Oops, didn't mean to make that a comment. Open, close, indent all of this. And now because comp is going to contain one computer name at a time, that's what I need to use. Instead of computer name, which may have more than one in it. Save. Let's run the command again. Get sysinfo, computer name, client.lab.pri, dc.lab.pri, format table, auto size. So just with that one simple change, I'm now outputting multiple objects. And the trick here is that for each computer, I query the information I want, I combine the information, I make it into an object, and I write that object out to the pipeline. And then I go back and get the next computer. Time to put this into a module. Just combine it all or enclose it all in a function. Now it's ready to become a module. In fact, let's copy that to the clipboard. And I'm going to go open that module that I wrote earlier. My documents, Windows PowerShell, modules, my tools. Here's my tools. All I have to do is paste that new function. Boom, right there. Save it. Go into a brand new shell session just to prove this is going to work. Get-sys, even though it's not loaded, because that module is stored in the right spot, PowerShell is going to find it. And it runs. So really, really, really great. Now, I want you to notice something here, and the sharp-eyed observer will have seen. Notice the order that I created these properties, and notice the order that they come out in. Normally in these hash tables, PowerShell does not worry about preserving the order. It kind of, my suspicion is it's rearranging them in memory in a way that makes them more memory efficient, but I actually don't know if that's true. It's clearly not random because it does rearrange them in a predictable order. It just isn't the order I wanted them in. Some folks will tell you, and I would be a little bit inclined to agree with them, that you shouldn't worry about that. Because if you need things to come out in a certain order, you can always use select object and specify computer name, model, MFGR. When you use select object, PowerShell will observe that ordering for you, so it keeps them in the same order that you specified. Well, in PowerShell version 3 and later, if you really need your output to, if it's just visually bugging you that your output's not displaying in the right order, then you create this as an ordered hash table. And it's just as easy as putting that ordered keyword in brackets, but right before the @ sign. Save that. Now, look here. I mentioned this in the I got to this, but I want to make sure you remember this. I'm going to run the command again without select object. Notice that it's not putting things in the order I specified. That's because the old version of the module is what's in memory here. Remove module my tools. Now I can run the command again. That will force the shell to load the new version from disk. And you'll notice now my properties are in the order I specified them in, because now it's an ordered hash table. So that's something you can do in version 3 and later. Very, very easy way to do that. There is a way in version 2 to do that. You just can't use this ordered keyword. That's what was added in version 3. So hopefully if this visual layout being exactly right is important to you, then you can work in version 3 where it makes it pretty easy to do that. So you've learned that each script gets one pipeline. And ideally, if you're going to take advantage of what PowerShell can do for you, you want to put one consistent thing into that pipeline, not a hodgepodge of different things. And the way to do that is to go retrieve that hodgepodge, but to combine them together into a custom output object. And you also learned that in version 3 and later, you have the ability to preserve the property order, although there's not necessarily a strong need to do so. It's more just a visual preference. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.